Friends, we can all see that many white bloggers have millions of followers. Please support me too because my followers are still few. Black bloggers also deserve to be famous. My friends, let's unite and lift each other up. Please press subscribe button and like. In the quiet suburb of Bethesda, Maryland, the sun blazed down on the neighborhood tennis courts, where a group of children gathered, laughter echoing in the air. Among them was Noah Desmond, an 11-year-old boy with a backward baseball cap, sipping water from his bottle. Little did he know, his peaceful afternoon was about to take a dark turn. Geraldine Pruitt, the self-appointed president of the Homeowners Association, HOA, strode across the concrete path, her sandals slapping against the ground with each determined step. Known for her strict enforcement of neighborhood rules, she had a reputation for confronting anyone she deemed out of line. Today, her target was Noah. "You don't belong here," she snapped, her finger jabbing toward him like a dagger. The other kids froze, eyes wide with disbelief. Noah blinked, confusion washing over him. "Ma'am, we're just sitting here." "We're not bothering anyone," he replied, his voice steady despite the tension that Geraldine's shadow loomed over him as she stepped closer, her anger palpable. "Don't you talk back to me. You're trespassing and you know it." A small girl beside Noah whispered, "He lives here. His house is on Chestnut Drive." But Geraldine was undeterred. "Get up and leave before I call the cops," she barked. Noah, stunned, slowly began to rise. But before he could fully stand, Geraldine's hand shot out, grabbing his arm with a grip far too tight for an adult on a child. She yanked him up and shoved him backward, causing him to stumble and fall onto the rough asphalt. Pain shot through his elbow, and tears welled in his eyes as he pushed himself up, embarrassment flooding over him. "Why'd you do that?" "I didn't do anything to you," he exclaimed, frustration mingling with fear. Geraldine towered over him, arms crossed. "People like you need to learn respect," she spat, her words hanging in the air like a thunderclap. The other kids gasped, one boy already pulling out his phone to record the incident. The world would soon know what Geraldine had done. Just then, Melissa Grant, a concerned neighbor walking her dog, rushed over. "What is going on here?" she demanded, her sunglasses slipping down her nose as she took in the scene. Geraldine stood her ground, insisting, "He's trespassing." But Melissa shook her head. "Noah lives here. His family moved in this spring." Geraldine's face twisted in disbelief. "That's not true. I check every new resident personally," she retorted, but the kids murmured in disbelief. "She's lying. Everybody knows his family's here," one of them shouted. Noah, voice trembling, added, "My dad's Calvin Desmond. We just moved from D.C. Melissa's eyebrows shot up. "Calvin Desmond? As in the FBI director?" she asked, crouching beside Noah to examine his scraped arm. Her tone turned icy as she looked back at Geraldine. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" For a moment, Geraldine's bravado faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "I don't care who he says his daddy is. Rules are rules," she snapped. But the tide was turning against her. The boy recording the incident spoke up, "Don't worry, I got everything. Every word." Geraldine's eyes blazed with fury. "Delete that right now or you'll regret it," she threatened, but the boy stood firm, raising his phone higher. "My mom's a lawyer. I know my rights." The crowd around them grew, and Geraldine realized she was losing control. She stormed back toward her house, muttering under her breath, but she knew the eyes of the neighborhood were on her. The boy with the phone continued recording, capturing every moment of her unraveling. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the video had gone viral. News spread like wildfire through the gated community, and soon the entire country would be watching. Geraldine Pruitt, the HOA president, had crossed a line, and the consequences were just beginning. Back at the Desmond home, Noah sat at the kitchen island, his arm bandaged and throbbing. His mother, Dr. Lillian Desmond, glanced out the window, aware of the growing whispers outside. "Noah, tell me exactly what happened," she urged gently. He recounted the incident, his voice trembling. "We were just sitting there. She came yelling, and then she grabbed me and pushed me." Lillian's expression hardened. "I believe you, and now she's going to answer for it. She pulled out her phone, typing a message as Calvin, Noah's father, walked in, his demeanor calm but concerned. "What happened?" he asked, taking in the scene. Noah hesitated before speaking softly. "The lady from the HOA pushed me." Calvin's eyes narrowed. "She what?" Lillian interjected. "Melissa saw everything, and another boy caught it on video. It's already online." Calvin's jaw tightened, but he remained composed. "Are you okay, champ?" he asked Noah, who nodded, though his eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I didn't do anything wrong," Noah said, his voice small. "I know you didn't," Calvin reassured him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You won't ever have to explain yourself to people like that, not while I'm here." Outside, Geraldine stood on her porch, arms crossed, daring anyone to confront her. But the crowd was growing, and the tide was turning. As the police arrived, Geraldine attempted to assert her authority. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. A group of children has been trespassing," she exclaimed. But the officer, Sergeant Adrian Keller, interrupted flatly. "How did things escalate?" Geraldine hesitated, her bravado faltering. "He resisted when I told him to move," she stammered. Melissa stepped forward, her voice firm. "That's a lie. You grabbed him and shoved him down. He's an 11-year-old boy." The officers exchanged glances and Keller nodded. "Let's talk to the boy." Geraldine stepped in front of them, insisting, "I'm the HOA president. If there's a complaint, it comes through me." But the crowd erupted in outrage. "You assaulted a child, Geraldine," someone shouted. "You don't speak for us anymore." The officers moved to speak with Noah, who recounted the incident, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "She yelled at me and pushed me. I fell and cut my arm." The officers exchanged looks, and Keller turned to Geraldine. "You're being detained for questioning regarding the assault of a child. We have video evidence and multiple witnesses." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Geraldine's face drained of color. "No, I'm the victim here," she protested, but her words fell on deaf ears. As the officers led her away, the crowd erupted in cheers. The tide had turned, and Geraldine's reign of terror was coming to an end. The Desmond family watched from their porch, a sense of relief washing over them. Calvin turned to Noah, who looked up with wide eyes. "It's over," he said softly. "She can't hurt you anymore." But the battle was far from over. The trial would soon begin, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have anticipated. As the courtroom filled with reporters and onlookers, the nation watched closely. The case of Geraldine Pruitt versus the Desmond family had become a symbol of accountability and justice. In the days leading up to the trial, the community buzzed with anticipation. Neighbors who had once feared Geraldine now rallied around the Desmonds, sharing their own stories of her intimidation tactics. The video of the incident circulated widely on social media, igniting outrage and support for Noah and his family. On the day of the trial, the courthouse was packed. Reporters jostled for position, eager to capture every moment. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Geraldine sat at the defense table, her once polished appearance now frayed, her eyes betraying a flicker of fear. Across the aisle, Calvin and Lillian Desmond sat with Noah, who clutched his mother's hand tightly. Judge Marjorie Whitfield called the court to order, her voice steady and authoritative. "We are here for the case of the state of Maryland versus Geraldine Pruitt, charged with assault on a minor, child endangerment, and harassment." The jury listened intently as the prosecution began to lay out their case. Carla Mendoza, the state's attorney, stood confidently. "Ladies and gentlemen, you will see with your own eyes what Mrs. Pruitt did. You will hear from the boy she attacked, from the neighbors who witnessed the incident, and from experts who will explain why her actions cannot be excused as discipline. At the end of this trial, you will find that no title, no position of power excuses putting your hands on a child." Geraldine's attorney, Paul Strickland, rose next, attempting to frame the narrative. "This was a misunderstanding. My client acted out of concern for her community. She did not intend harm." But the jury's eyes told a different story. They had already seen the video. The first witness was Melissa Grant, who recounted the incident in vivid detail. "She yelled at him, Then she grabbed him and pushed him down. I saw it. Everyone saw it. The courtroom was silent, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Next, it was Noah's turn to take the stand. He walked slowly, his small frame dwarfed by the large chair. Calvin squeezed his shoulder reassuringly as he approached the microphone. Can you tell us what happened that day? Carla asked gently. Noah took a deep breath. She yelled at me, said I didn't belong. I told her I lived there, but she didn't listen. Then she grabbed me and pushed me. I fell and cut my arm. His voice trembled, but he held firm, the truth shining through his fear as the trial progressed, the evidence mounted against Geraldine. Witness after witness testified, painting a picture of a woman who had abused her power and targeted a child. The jury listened intently, their expressions growing more serious with each passing moment. Then came the moment that would change everything. Geraldine herself took the stand, her arrogance still intact. I was protecting this neighborhood, she insisted. That boy was disrespectful. Kids need discipline. But when Carla cross-examined her, the facade began to crack. You admit you put your hands on an 11-year-old? Carla pressed. Geraldine hesitated, then snapped, yes, and I would do it again. Gasps filled the courtroom, and the jury's decision seemed all but sealed as the trial drew to a close. The tension in the air was palpable. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours, and when they returned, the courtroom was packed with anxious spectators. Judge Whitfield addressed the foreperson, her voice steady. Has the jury reached a verdict? Yes, Your Honor, the foreperson replied, standing with a slip of paper in hand. In the matter of the state of Maryland versus Geraldine Pruitt, on the charge of assault on a minor, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. Geraldine's face twisted in disbelief, her bravado shattered. This isn't justice. This is politics, she cried, but her words fell on deaf ears as the reality of her actions sank in. As the judge continued, on the charge of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. The crowd erupted in applause. The tide had turned, and accountability had finally found its way into the light. But the story didn't end there. The community had rallied around the Desmonds, and the impact of the trial would resonate far beyond Bethesda. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of Geraldine's reign, the message was clear: no one is above the law, and justice would always prevail. And as Noah looked up at his parents, a sense of relief washed over him. He had stood up for himself, and in doing so, he had helped his community find its voice. The battle was won, but the fight for justice and accountability would continue, reminding everyone that silence is never the answer. Do you want to know the fate of the heroes? Please post part 2. Subscribe to the channel and continue watching. Your opinion and support are important to me. Leave it in the comments. Thank you.